Today's 16-bit superhero game is one that I've been dying to jump back into for a long time. It's The Adventures of Batman and Robin, published by Sega, developed by Clockwork Tortoise for the Sega Genesis. There was a Sega CD version of this game, I believe. I don't have that. And there is a different Adventures of Batman and Robin game for the Super Nintendo, which was published and developed by Konami, which I love. This is an entirely different game, and I have to be honest, this is a game that I've had in my collection ever since Sega sent us this game to review back in 1995 for the Sega Genesis. It might have been one of the handful of 16-bit titles that was sent to the Electric Playground to review. We would have reviewed it maybe back on our website back then. I know I've got that archive somewhere. Our website has changed a million times over the last 25 years, and now it's very much video focused. But I know that I reviewed this game, and I wrote about it and talked about it, and I probably talked about it in previous episodes of Electric Playground. And I always dismissed this game. I always thought that this was a very silly Batman game because of the main deal with this title is that you're constantly you're shooting. It's a shooter. And so batarangs and all kinds of different tools and weaponry is flying out of Batman's hands or Robin's hands. This is a two-player game. You can play as Batman and Robin. You're constantly shooting stuff, and that just doesn't feel like Batman to me. So how did I enjoy jumping back into The Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Genesis in 2020? I freaking loved it. I thought it was so crazy fun, and maybe it's because I've been inundated with lots of great Genesis titles over the last couple of years thanks to the Sega Genesis Mini. I've been playing a lot of treasure games. I freaking love Gunstar Heroes, and it kind of struck me that Clockwork Tortoise and Sega developed a treasure-like Batman game, and the action is completely fast and frenetic and crazy and over the top, and it's sort of, incongruous with the idea that Batman is a detective and he's got to think about different things. And I love what Konami did with the Adventures of Batman Robin game, where you could go into the utility belt and pick out different tools and stuff. This one is not that. This is you're running and gunning for the entirety of the experience. You're trying to avoid the bullet hell that's coming across the screen. The game's it tips to the unfair category, but there's a lot of strategy involved in this game as well. You don't want to just blast all of your batarangs as quickly as possible. You want to wait for them to power up, and you get different kinds of electrical attacks and acid attacks and fire attacks, and you wait for the little meter to go to the farthest point. Meanwhile, you're jumping and dodging and trying to avoid all of the different projectiles that are headed your way. But if you wait a bit, you've got a lot more power with your attacks. So it's not just blast on the button and just try to ram through everything. You've got to be kind of athletic and graceful and acrobatic and avoid all of these things, and then shoot at the right time. And once I started to wrap my head around that and see some of the later levels in the game, I was just absolutely blown away. And then I asked my daughter to join me and play the game with me, and she was Robin and I was Batman, and it was just crazy, cool, fun. And I was really struck by how elegant this game is. I mean, they got the art style. The art looks like the cartoon that it was based on. I actually love the artwork in this game. The sprite work is fantastic. Batman and Robin are a little bit smaller, but the environments look great and the enemies look great, and there's a lot of diversity in the kinds of different attacks that you're going to do throughout the experience. There's also an amazing overhead flying sequence, so you've got like a standard scrolling flying shooter type deal in the middle of this thing. It really feels like an arcade game, and there are even credits right at the beginning of the title, which will go down as you're continuing on. There was definitely a distinct design choice, which may feel a little sort of out of touch with what Batman and Robin really are, but I'm over that. And what I recognized is that this is a beautifully made game. Like, there was a real design idea here to make this a run and gun shooter action title, and it just plays beautifully. And then they went into the tool belt of the Batman universe and threw in the Mad Hatter and Mr. Freeze, got Two-Face in there, and you've got Harley Quinn, and like a whole cast of fantastic characters is going to pop up in there. And then an amazing assortment of different enemy types as well. You've got gangster types with the Two-Face kind of silo with Harley Quinn and the Joker. You've got flying little Joker bots and all kinds of clown-themed elements. With the Mad Hatter, it's like you've got all of these crazy toys coming after you. One of them is really cute. It's a little bunny with floppy ears that is actually a bomb, which I thought was pretty cool. lots of stuff exploding all over the place. There's also some pretty cool scaling effects and bosses and creatures and things that take up the entirety of the screen. Every once in a while, Batman and Robin will have little jetpacks and they'll be flying around blasting at bad guys in 360 degrees. This is a phenomenal game. It's a weird Batman game, for sure, but it is a phenomenal game, and it's beautifully made, and it's another one of these 16-bit titles where I really wish that developers at this skill level, with this amount of ability, were able to continue making scrolling 16-bit style games well into the PlayStation era and the Nintendo 64 era, and continue on with this discipline that is so wonderfully represented in this title. This is a fantastic 16-bit action game. It's one of the best playing ones I have seen. In retrospect, I also believe that this absolutely should have been included on the Sega Genesis Mini, and there's an allusion to a sequel at the end of this. There's a little hint that more could be coming, and man, I would love for Warner Brothers and DC and a video game studio to kind of lift the baton and make a sequel to this. Also make a sequel to the phenomenal Konami game as well. I can't believe how much I love this game. Very impressed, and I'm very glad that I've created this segment to go back into some of these titles. I did this all because of the Spider-Man game in 2018, by the way. I was like, oh my god, I love this game so much, and I love superheroes and games, and I want to go back and play a bunch of the ones that I missed, or in the case of this specific cartridge, overlooked or didn't think much of at the time, and boy do I regret it now. This game is phenomenal. I'm giving The Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Sega Genesis a 9.5 out of 10.